Good morning and welcome to Peace Out, where I'm practicing it right now because literally at 8 or 7:57, the electricity blinked and my internet went out and all that. I mean, you can use 5G, but let's face it, 5G does not really work, right? But so I had a moment of, and then I was like, it'll reset, it reset, we're all good to go, right? I had to reconnect, so I had to wait just a minute for it to reconnect. Anyway, I hope you're having a good morning. Hope you're enjoying the nice fall temperatures. I pulled out my cords for a flannel for the day just to see if it'll be comfortable for the day. You put on long sleeves and you roll them up, right? That's just the way we do things. So this week we're talking about how God used natural things to do supernatural wonders, I guess is the best word, right? So, and yesterday we talked about a couple of different things. And so as I went about the day yesterday, I just kept thinking about different things in the scriptures. And actually I had another one planned, and right before I went over, grabbed my Bible to get ready for the live, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do this one instead. And so there you go. That's my brain, right? Welcome to my world. That's where things change on a dime or without a dime. It doesn't need to, it doesn't matter. I can distract myself, right? So I went back to thinking about Moses and how in Exodus 15, it's Exodus 15. Most of Exodus 15 is a song because they came out of Egypt, they hit the Red Sea, Pharaoh's armies pressing in behind them. They were in a really tight spot, literally between what we could call a rock and a hard spot, the Red Sea in front of them and Pharaoh's army behind them. And yet they were right where God wanted them. Their adversity wasn't an indication that they missed God. Moses had followed God's specific instructions to that point, and they still found themselves in a difficult situation. It was just on the edge, though, of God bringing a great deliverance, right? It was a setup so that they could see what God was going to do for them, really, in a way, right? And so it didn't mean that they missed God. It didn't mean that they missed one of God's directions. It didn't mean that they weren't following God. Just because bad things happen doesn't mean that God is bad. God is always good. God is good, and he's good when we get what we want and when we don't get what we want. And so they crossed the Red Sea. God parts the Red Sea, another natural element. He used the wind to part the Red Sea, to dry the land, made a miracle out of something totally natural. They cross the Red Sea, and they come to a place called Marah. And Marah actually means bitter, right? But they came to the place, and they found there was water. Let's see, it was 3 days after they'd been without water, and they came to Marah, and they were like, yay, there's water. But it was bitter. They couldn't even drink it. And so they start fussing and whining. And I know none of y'all do that. I do it well, right? And so they started fussing. They're going, oh, great. God brought us out here. Now, what are we going to drink? Now, they have just dismissed all the miracles that God's already done. And they think this one's bigger than parting the Red Sea. He parted the Red Sea, and we came across on dry land. Then he wiped out Pharaoh's army with the waters of the Red Sea as he allowed them to fall back down and consume that army. And now, is this a big thing for a God who could do that? And yet, don't we tend to forget what God did last time sometimes? We forget that all the things, this is why it's good to rehearse your testimony. This is why it's good to choose to be thankful. And sometimes when you start being thankful, you got to go back. And as you go back to the things that you're thankful for, you begin to realize how much God's hand was in your movement, was in those decisions, was how much he protected you from, and how much God was with you in those battles. And so you look at your past to remind you that God is in your present, and he's going to be in your future, right? So if God handled that, he can handle this, whatever your that is and whatever your this is. If God handled all that, he's got this too. But they come, and the water is bitter. And Moses, it says, and they're all like, what are we going to drink? And Moses cried out to the Lord for help. And God showed Moses a branch, a tree. I think the King James says a tree, and the New Living says a branch. God showed Moses a branch. It was just a branch. It was just a normal branch on a normal tree, sitting by a normal body of water. There's nothing unusual about it. There was nothing extraordinary about it. It was just a branch. But God showed Moses that branch. And when Moses saw that branch, Moses took the branch, threw it into the water, and it made the water good to drink. It was a natural thing God used to bring about a miracle for the people who needed water. You can't go very long with it. You can go quite a long time without food, but you can't live without water. And they're going to all die. They think God brought us out here to die. Sometimes I've thought that. Right? We all think that sometimes, right? And so, but God used a very natural thing, something you wouldn't think of. That's not a practice. You don't go, oh, we'll just put the branch in the water and it always makes the water sweet. No, hiking, I carried with me a water purification because water is so important to just our existence and survival. And I carried a small thing that you purify the water, right? But you don't carry a branch around. That's not something normal. God did something beyond the normal, right? You can call it supernatural. It's because they needed something in the natural. God is always working on our behalf, and it's not all spiritual out there. I am not negating or taking anything away from what God works in us spiritually. Salvation, righteousness just blows my mind because I know me. I know me better than anybody. And the fact that the truth that I'm righteous because of Christ just blows my mind. It talks about we have all these spiritual blessings through Christ. Through our knowledge of Christ, we have what we need for life and for godliness. And the spiritual blessings and the spiritual side of things blows my mind. But sometimes when God brings that into the natural, it just totally blows my mind again, right? And so God used something very natural he used something natural to meet a natural need they had in a very supernatural way. Because throwing a branch in the water does not make water pure. There has to be more then, right? There had to be more to the story then if the branch made the water sweet where they could drink it and it could sustain life, from what was going to take life away. I would say so. What if the branch is symbolic of the cross? What if the branch symbolizes the cross Jesus was going to die on, and maybe prophesied that in a way, and that cross, that entry of that cross into my life, the waters of my life, makes what was bitter sweet? That's a thought, right? And so it's a spiritual parallel here that I think we can draw and go, when we put the cross in our lives, we can handle this. God's going to use natural things to meet our natural needs in supernatural ways, right? And that means that all comes down to we can trust him. And I don't want to get off on this, but man, my head's going crazy right now. Can you imagine what Moses was feeling in this moment? First off, he sees a burning. Let's see if we can just make a real quick synopsis of what's going on in Moses' life. He kills an Egyptian, so he runs to the wilderness. In the back of the wilderness for 40 years, and he sees a burning bush. He sees the burning bush. The burning bush says, go get my people, right? So Moses goes, well, I can't talk, but okay, come on, Aaron, let's go. He goes, he sees the 10 plagues. He talks to Pharaoh several times. He sees his rod turns into a snake and eats their snakes, their rods. They have the 10 plagues. And then he's got 1 million people following him out, or hundreds of thousands of people following him out of Egypt. They run into the Red Sea. Oh no! Now Pharaoh's always coming behind them. They're squished between a rock and a hard spot. God opens the sea. They cross over. The army follows them in. God wipes out the army. God's hand was in everything. They come to the bitter water. All the people are going, what are we going to drink? Moses is like, what am I going to do with these people? Why did you bring? Maybe Moses would. If I was Moses, thank God I wasn't. Why did you bring me out here with all these cranky people? What were you thinking, God? Have you ever asked that? What were you thinking, God? Did you think this through, God? And God's always going to say, just put the cross in it. Go back to the cross. Why? That's where that peace is. That's where his love is. That's where we live. When we put the cross in the bitterness of life, life becomes sweet again. Because, there's an old song that says, sweeter as the days go by, right? Jesus gets sweeter as the days go by. I won't sing it. I will after I get off here, right? So we want to put the cross in our day-to-days in our natural things, when we're working on a project for a client, we're loving on our grandchildren, when we're teaching school, when we're delivering mail, 18, right? Whatever we're doing, we put the cross in that. And what was bitter becomes sweet. And God sustains our lives. He's a good God. We can trust him to use natural things in a supernatural way. That's what we're talking about this week, and that's why we're peacing out. So peace out, you guys. Have a great day. I'll see you again tomorrow.